Afrika mischt die internationale Kunstszene auf. Viele Länder erleben einen kulturellen Aufschwung, beflügelt durch die Rückgabe wichtiger Kunstwerke, die einst von den Kolonialmächten geraubt wurden. Neue Museen entstehen, ältere erfinden sich neu. Kapstadts Waterfront ist der touristische Magnet Südafrikas. Und mittendrin das weltweit größte und einzige Museum für zeitgenössische afrikanische Kunst, das Zeitz Museum of Contemporary African Art, kurz Zeitz MOCAA.
Particularly our vision here is really to write new chapters of our art history.
I get really happy to be part of this African giant, Zeitz MOCAA, because it's a huge door, opening into a lot of other beautiful and amazing creative stuff.
I don't qualify for what Europe understands or wants to see Africa to be. I think that African art absolutely is something which understands and has developed and has always existed independently.
We have a beautiful exhibition by Johannes Pokela titled Only Sun in the Sky Knows How I Feel, A Lucid Dream, which is a succinct survey of work by one of our most preeminent painters on the continent. It's an important moment for us to host an exhibition like this because it gives attention to an artist that has been largely neglected for the last decade.
Der Südafrikaner Johannes Pokela setzt sich in seinen Werken kritisch mit klassisch-westlichen Symbolen der Kunstgeschichte auseinander. Er hält, Till Eulenspiegel gleich, der Welt einen Spiegel vor. Dabei persifliert der europäische Altmeister von der Renaissance bis zum Barock, legt Machtverhältnisse damals und heute offen. Die Museumsdirektorin Koyo Kuo, eine der wichtigsten Persönlichkeiten der internationalen Kunstszene, will von Johannes Pokela wissen, wie er die Ideen zu seinen Bildern entwickelt.
The source of the images of sort of 19th century illustrations, which I found in a newspaper. And that newspaper actually had a headline, eating people isn't always wrong. Mm-hmm. And I was taken by that.
My favorite, mainly in this cluster of consumption and social commentary, is this work.
The Santa Claus.
Yes, the Santa Claus work. What does nudity do to it?
I guess, well, there's a sexual element, and there's no doubt about that. But there's also this issue of sex tourism in South Africa, which is quite common.
He tells our stories very succinctly, very powerfully. He deals with a lot of issues related to violence, to identity, to social kind of issues that's being faced on the continent. But he's also denying some of those kind of issues that we might want to lay at him.
Johannes Pokela wurde zu Apartheidzeiten im Township Soweto bei Johannesburg geboren. 1976 demonstrierten in Soweto Schülerinnen und Schüler für gleiche Bildungschancen. Ihr Aufstand wurde vom Regime brutal zerschlagen. Johannes Pokela war damals 10.
There's helicopters all over the place. Through the school windows you can see flames all over the place. The teachers tried to kind of calm us down, stop us from panicking, so we're all told to lie down, basically. We all lied down, all the windows were all closed because there was some tear gas. We didn't actually really know what was happening. So we were kept in classes, away from seeing anything until the evening. At some point, we had to run if police vans came and everything. It was a hectic situation.
Die Polizei schoss auf Schülerinnen und Schüler. Es gab hunderte Verletzte und zahlreiche Tote. Das jüngste Todesopfer an diesem Tag war erst 12 Jahre alt.
It's something that I wouldn't wish anyone to actually really go through at the age of 10, actually, yeah. It's a situation, I guess I could say, influenced what I am today, really, because it's psychologically stayed with me, Some people see that in the atmosphere in my work. I don't see it.
South Africa has a very rich and strong history also of resistance art. Art has played a very important role in the struggle for freedom as well. So I think the way that artists work here is then also, as a part of that legacy, is to be very connected to what's going on around them and to be committed and embedded within the context that they work in.
Die Sonderausstellung ist bereits für Publikum geöffnet, doch vollständig ist sie noch nicht. Johannes Pokeela hat am Royal College of Art in London Kunst studiert. Mittlerweile lebt er wieder in Johannesburg. Für seine Arbeit am letzten Werk für die Ausstellung im Zeitz MOCAA hat er sich nun in einem belebten Stadtteil von Kapstadt ein Atelier angemietet. Er beschäftigt sich mit einer prominenten Gestalt der römischen Mythologie, der Göttin Venus. Die Komposition wirkt wie eine vertraute europäische Kulisse. Doch die sitzende Marmorskulptur der Göttin der Liebe und Schönheit ist im Spiegelbild eine Afrikanerin.
The purpose of the museum in a larger sense is to become a site of engagement and like a civic kind of activity for the society in discussing our experiences, our histories, our dreams, our projections through the means of what our contemporary art enables.
Die beiden Hafenbecken in der Tafelbucht erhielten ihren Namen von Königin Victoria und ihrem zweiten Sohn Prinz Alfred. Sie sind Zeugnis einstiger englischer Kolonialherrschaft. Unterhalb des Tafelbergs erstreckt sich Kapstadts Einkaufs- und Vergnügungsmeile, die Victoria and Alfred Waterfront, mit dem Zeitz MOCAA als neuem Prestigebau.
Before the building was transformed into a museum that opened in 2017, it was actually a grain silo. And it was built around the 1920s, and it was the tallest building in southern Africa for a very long time.
Zu Zeiten des Apartheid-Unrechts durften schwarze Menschen nur in die Innenstadt, um hier zu arbeiten. Im Silokomplex wurden Weizen und Mais aus ganz Afrika zwischengelagert, verkauft, zu einem Anlegesteg transportiert und in die ganze Welt verschifft. Als in den 1970er Jahren die Containerschifffahrt aufkam, benötigten die mächtigen Meeresfrachter tiefere Gewässer. So lag Ende der 1980er Jahre das Hafengebiet brach. Die Victoria and Alfred Waterfront ging in Privatbesitz über, wurde aufwendig restauriert, dicht bebaut und zum Publikumsmagneten. Mit 26 Millionen Besuchern jährlich ist es die größte Touristenattraktion Südafrikas.
So 55% of the people who visit the waterfront are Cape Townians, 30% are international tourists, and then the remainder are kind of Africans from upcountry.
Lange blieb der ehemalige Silokomplex, der einst Mittelpunkt des wirtschaftlichen Lebens im Hafen war, ungenutzt.
We came up with the idea that it should be a museum to exhibit art. And that's the kind of genesis. We then started researching how do we create one of the best museums in the world.
Für die Umsetzung wollte man einen Star-Architekten, einen, der für die Konzeption kühner Bauvorhaben bekannt ist. Die Wahl fiel auf Thomas Heatherwick aus London. Zeitgleich suchte der in Mannheim geborene Top-Manager Jochen Zeitz nach einer Location für seine weltweit größte Sammlung afrikanischer Gegenwartskunst. Man teilte eine Vision. Jochen Zeitz bestückte das Museum dauerhaft mit seiner Sammlung und die Waterfront übernahm die Kosten für die 32 Millionen Euro teure Sanierung des alten Silo-Komplexes.
In fact, we removed 75% of the whole structure. Now, when you look at it aesthetically from the exterior, it looks exactly as it used to look. Because what we did was we reinforced all of the outer silos, and we actually had to line them with a new concrete. We effectively built the building inside the building.
Bei den gewölbten Fenstern haben sich Thomas Heatherwick und sein Team von der alten Glasbläserkunst in Venedig inspirieren lassen. Auf über 6000 Quadratmetern Ausstellungsfläche präsentiert das Haus in 80 Räumen und auf 7 Etagen moderne Kunst. Am 22. September 2017 eröffnete das Zeitz MOCAA. Es gab Befürchtungen, dass das Museum inhaltlich von weißen europäischen Männern gestaltet werden könnte. Diese Kritik hat sich mittlerweile gelegt.
I just got a call from upstairs. Yes. Mariba says, yes.
We want to ensure that every citizen of Africa can access the museum for free, and at Wednesday mornings the museum is open for free.
People can walk in and see their own stories, their own history, their own struggles, their own complexities, at some point, exhibited or interrogated or examined within the museum walls.
Our aim and desire is that the museum has its own identity, independent from the waterfront. So we absolutely consciously have absolutely no part whatsoever in the curatorial content. We leave that to the museum professionals.
First of all, I think the work that we as an institution did and needed to do was to understand ourselves outside of the architecture of the museum. We had to become a museum outside of the incredible architecture.
Das Museum widmete die bisher größte Sonderausstellung dem südafrikanischen Künstler William Kentridge. Sein 40-jähriges Schaffen umfasst Zeichnungen, Filme, Theater- und Opernproduktionen. William Kentridge beschäftigt sich mit dem Erbe von Kolonialismus und Apartheid. Er geht der globalen Frage nach, was uns menschlich macht.
A lot of people like to talk about how there's attention on artists from Africa, but we have to remember that artists from Africa have been making work for centuries, for a very long time. And whether or not there is a Western gaze or more Western appreciation, that's irrelevant. We have been making sophisticated, thought-provoking, important work for a very long time.
Okay, so here we are with Nelef Moholi's work. That's them over there. They're a South African photographer, often called a visual activist because their practice is highlighting the discrimination and violence often felt by the queer community in the country, but also on the continent as a whole, because it acts as a strong army, being proud of their individuality and who they are, and giving a voice to these individuals that often don't have one.
If you look at Alan Atsui's work, for instance, what he makes out of bottle caps is extraordinary. You know, this is a language, this is a visual language that I think exists on this continent and is from this continent. We have the power to turn bottle caps into gold, and you see that in the work that comes from this continent.
Während der Corona-Krise erlebte Südafrika einen der härtesten Lockdowns weltweit, mit drastischen Ausgangssperren und Einschränkungen.
Suddenly, the museum was closed for 8 months to a public when the COVID-19 pandemic struck. Now, what is a museum without people?
It gave us the opportunity to really delve into what kind of museum we want to make. One of the suggestions that I brought was to really, you know, do something different, do something special, because the pandemic has shown how much adjacency is important.
We sent out a call to the city of Cape Town that anybody who wanted to bring in an artwork could bring it to the museum and we will install it.
What does art mean for people who live in Cape Town and who come to this museum?
This museum proposed a platform that, look, all creatives, intellectuals should meet on a common ground.
Putting together an exhibition with nearly 2,000 artworks isn't a small feat for any institution, but we really have to give credit to the amazing staff here at the museum.
I got to see grannies with their grandchildren and they both submitting artworks, you know, and I thought to myself, so now we're closing generational gaps. Now we're bridging these isolated communities. That's what we need. We can't talk about unity and we're not doing anything about it. If that spirit, you know, we could hold on to it a little bit longer, much greater things would be accomplished and a lot of negative energy would be sidelined.
Auch beinahe 30 Jahre nach dem Ende von Apartheid leben Millionen Menschen in Armenvierteln, den Townships. Lindisipo Gulwa pendelt zwischen den Welten und geht jeden Tag vom Township Guguletu zur Arbeit an die Waterfront.
Cape Town is this beautiful mansion, you know, and it poses in a manner that it's welcoming. And then when you get to the backside, you're like, the township, oh my God. This is how the back looks. 2 worlds at the same time. And if you're not strong enough emotionally, you will break down because you clearly see, you know, the clarity of inequality, you know. You're like, okay, but what do you do in a situation like that? You know, you make art about it.
Über das Art Education Program macht das Museum auch Kindern aus den Townships Kunst zugänglich.
Education opens a door in your mind to a point that just because we don't agree with each other, it doesn't mean that we have to fight. I have to understand your perspective, where you're coming from, and I have to understand why this is right to you but wrong to me. So, education, you learn to stretch your mind before you stretch your arm.
Come on, man, that's old school. You don't call people.
Nach Feierabend bleibt Lindisipo Gulwa im Museum und malt seine eigenen Bilder. Gemeinsam mit seinem Cousin erarbeitet er eine Serie mit dem Titel We Are Women, in der es um die verheerende Zunahme von Gewalt gegen Frauen geht.
We as men, we are tough and we are built to be big, but however, the muscle, you know, God has a sense of humor. He made us big. God made man a big joke. you know, and a woman is a humble leader. They're just sitting like this and looking at us like, when you're tired of your physical strength, ask me for an advice. We as the society, we need to educate ourselves based on the value of woman.
Am Abend leert sich allmählich die Innenstadt von Kapstadt.
You see dozens of people rushing out of the city, back to the township, and everyone has got this pale face on, sweaty and smelly, you know, and it's as if they're getting chased out, but they're actually rushing home because they're exhausted. That's the story of Cape Town. That is the story of the rest of the world as well.
In den Townships haben viele weder fließend Wasser noch Strom. Man hilft sich gegenseitig. Die Entstehung der Townships ist eng mit Apartheid verbunden. Doch die Kluft zwischen Arm und Reich blieb auch im neuen Südafrika bestehen. Und sie wächst weiter.
It is not in my appetite to dwell on the past because that has happened in the past. We are the new generation and we are the future.
The other things that we are doing, which I think very few museums in the world do, is to have artist studios in the museum.
Wechselnde Kunstschaffende arbeiten im offenen Atelier des Museums, das auch für Publikum zugänglich ist. Für einige Monate nutzt die Fotografin, Video- und Performance-Künstlerin Tanja Petersen die Atelierräume. Die Muslimin setzt sich in ihrer Arbeit intensiv mit ihren kulturellen und religiösen Wurzeln auseinander. Der farbenprächtige Stadtteil Bo-Kaap gilt als das historische Zentrum der Kapmalaien, deren Vorfahren aus Südostasien nach Südafrika verschleppt und versklavt wurden. Hier steht auch die älteste Moschee des Landes. Viele Verwandte und Freundinnen von Tanja Petersen leben im Bo-Kaap. Die Künstlerin kämpft gegen Stigmatisierung.
I am described as Cape Malay in South Africa, but it's a really problematic term. It was given to us during apartheid as a way of excluding us, you know, from the greater black community. And it was very strategic. So all people who were Muslim were called Cape Malay.
Tanja Petersen fand heraus, dass einer ihrer Vorfahren ein Prinz war. So stellte sie sich als Königin dar, um Menschen, deren Vorfahren versklavt wurden, ihre Würde zurückzugeben. Als Muslimin beschäftigen sie islamophobe Tendenzen.
For us, Islam has always been an anti-colonial movement. It has always been an anti-apartheid movement. It has always been standing for justice, and it was a space of liberation for people of color. We're always being pushed out. We're always being told where we can live. We're always being gentrified. There is always an apartheid because a racial apartheid had morphed into an economic apartheid, and we will always be vulnerable. We're just 2 paychecks away from being pushed back into the spaces that apartheid had pushed us into.
Tanja Petersen schärft den Blick auf das heutige Südafrika und damit auch über den Tellerrand des afrikanischen Kontinents hinaus in die Weite der Welt.
She's also navigating the messiness of history and the messiness of her own identity, asking critical questions about how we perceive people and how we kind of identify and how we kind of like impose onto others that are different than ourselves.
It's a bit dark. Do you want me to take you in? Okay.
Im offenen Atelier zeigt die Künstlerin eines ihrer Videos. Es trägt den Titel Kasaram. Die Bewegungen des Kapmalaien-Chors sollen an die Schiffe erinnern, mit denen die Sklaven über den Indischen Ozean nach Südafrika gebracht wurden. Tanja Petersen spielt mit Stereotypen und den Schubladen, in die Kapmalaien gesteckt worden sind. Doch dann verändert sich das Video, energisch vorangetrieben von der tanzenden Tanja Petersen. Ein Mensch brennt. Es sind Aufnahmen vom Tod eines Bandenführers, der von einer Menschenmenge hingerichtet wurde.
Is that we are now perpetuating the violence that was done to us, we are now doing to ourselves. This is the success of apartheid. This is the success of colonization, when people forget how to love themselves because they've been stripped of everything and everyone that they do love. And that is what that film highlights, the fractured community.
The continent has been for the longest time, too long, 500 years, so defined by narratives of others in many ways that we have to reclaim our speech, and art is a form of speech.
Art from Africa means to me, it has to do with heritage, pride, celebrations, history. It will take a while to unpack it.
We are not here to bridge a gap between Africa and Europe or what have you. No. We are here to talk to ourselves.